But I believe you were a world-class acrobat. Is that correct?
I previously was an acrobat, so but that's a pastime.
Not everything is black and white, and just because one organiser or one company says no, doesn't mean that they all will.
For anyone out there who plays AFL and it's like, well, it's not that risky. What are we talking about? My nephew just broke his leg.
The most popular activity is recreational walking, which I guess makes sense. It's something we can all do, walk outside. But that had over 10 million participants.
It's arguably something we all have to do.
I don't know whether you would have been able to being an acrobat.
You can't insure acrobats, unfortunately, because as soon as they injure themselves a small amount, then they're out of work completely.
Yeah,
so that's, from an insurance point of view, that's really difficult.
Imagine your job description, I've been shot out of a cannon.
Yeah, exactly. Hey there, I'm Phil Thompson, and today with me we have another deep dive, and we've got Kellie Pearce, one of our advisors. Thanks for joining me, Kellie.
Thank you, Phil.
So today we are going to be talking about pastimes and what that means and how it impacts our insurance. So before we get started, what does pastimes actually mean?
Well, pastimes can be anything really that's not work. It can range from being a hobby, something that you like to do, playing a game, extending out. So really we're looking at things that just outside of being in the 9 to 5 at work and doing something a little bit as an extra curriculum activity.
All right, when we say pastimes, so for me, I hear the word past and time. So does it mean something I used to previously do, or do we need to be doing it today?
Well, I wonder why it's called a pastime. It's a really good thing. No, it's a hobby, it's a sport, it's an activity that we're doing, and for an insurance purposes, it's something that we're doing now or something that we intend to do in the near future. So yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean in the past.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually my next question is if we have something in the future, and maybe it's just like a thought bubble, I'd love to one day do this. Actually, to be perfectly honest, one thing I would love to do, now I'm petrified of it, but I think I would love to do it, is learn how to fly. Now, I'm not the best flyer anyway, so I would be freaked out about crashing, but that's like a thought bubble. I have no plan of actually doing it, but I would love to do it in the future. Now, that's a hazardous activity. Would that be included, you think?
I think you have to have intentions or plans. So it has to be a little bit more rather than just a thought bubble. It's something that you're actually planning to do. So you've got something in place to get that plan happening. So not just, in 50 years' time, one day I'm going to get up there, because for a lot of people that will just never happen.
Yeah. And everyone's got we've all got grand plans of things that we want to do in the future. And yeah, so if Kate had bought me a lessons to do it, then okay, there's a clear intention to do it. And it's pretty clear cut. It was purchased 6 months before my application. So it's much easier to say that is a clear intention. But me thinking one day maybe, then that's not a future activity.
Yeah, that's right. So if there's nothing particularly in place, that's not something you would need to declare to an insurance company. But if you have lessons and you're starting on the 1st of September and I'm going to learn how to fly, then yeah, that's something that you would want to disclose to an insurance company.
All right, now let's talk about actual pastimes, about your pastimes. So what are some things that you do? You've got some interesting pastimes.
Yeah, I have. I've had a few interesting pastimes that are still going. So one of them that I personally have what we call exclusions in my cover for, which we can cover off, but I do motor rally. So I get in a car that's all fully caged and with a helmet and proper belts, and I co-drive with my husband driving a rally car. So we've competed in this highest of the world rally in Australia, and we go out and run a car flat out on dirt roads. And surprisingly enough, or not surprisingly, I've got an exclusion for cover with my insurance cover, which means if something happened and I was injured during that particular event, my existing income protection would not pay my cover if I was injured while I was doing that particular activity.
It's really important to understand the nuances of that as well, because if you were driving in a car, just normally driving, and something happened and you were in an accident, you would still be covered under your cover for that. It's the rally driving that you're not covered for.
Yeah, and it is a nuance. So if I'm driving to the event or home from the event and something happens, it's all fully covered. It's just when I'm in that particular activity at the time. And if something was unfortunate enough to happen then that I potentially have a problem in claiming for that. So yeah, so that's one pastime with exclusions. Actually, Phil, part of the reason why I brought this up to have a chat about, I wanted to find out about some of your, maybe they were past times, but I believe you were a world-class acrobat. Is that correct?
I previously was an acrobat, but that's a pastime. That was many years ago, many moons ago, when I was didn't have the dad bod that I do today. So yes, I used to do handstands on someone else's head. So that was one of my pastimes.
And did that involve flying? Because you said you wanted to fly. I had visions of you flying through the air with your little Superman cape or something.
No, so as a part of acrobatics, there's one person's called the base, and they're the big stump. A bit more skilled than that. If my base is out there, Josh, you're not a big stump. You're an incredibly skilled acrobat. But they stand as still as possible. And then I was the flyer in that, but it's not. You're not up there doing anything. I mean, we did do some stuff. One of the craziest skills that I still remember was I jumped off a trampoline and did a double back salt and landed on his shoulders.
Oh, wow.
And this guy,
Was that's actually performing in
no, we
front of
didn't perform that. No, that was just training. That was just,
Right.
and I had lines, so I didn't die. But basically, that day I remember this guy, 25-year-old, very strong, muscly man in tears because I just constantly kicking him in the back of the head after. And so, yeah, that was a pastime. So if I apply for cover today, it won't impact it because I've done that a long time ago. And I used to do that for work as well. So that's one of these things that a pastime is just an activity that's got nothing to do with your occupation, but occupationally that would have been another, a whole bunch of other issues when getting insurance.
I don't know whether you would have been able to being an acrobat.
No, I mean we wouldn't have. You can't insure acrobats, unfortunately, because as soon as they injure themselves a small amount, then they're out of work completely.
Yeah,
So that's from an insurance point of view, that's really difficult.
I can imagine your job description. I've been shot out of a cannon. That sort of
Yeah,
doesn't go
exactly.
well with an insurer. They're inherently risky. They don't like risk. They're risk averse people anyway. And
Yeah.
people flying through the air is probably not top on their agenda as far as insuring people.
Yeah, and I mean some other pastimes that I have that I currently do. So let's talk about some of them. I play indoor cricket every week, so that is somewhat hazardous. I've been playing tennis with Seb, most weeks. What else do I do? I went skiing with the family like a month ago. So they're kind of the things that we're talking about that group into these pastimes. And so, yeah, some of the things I do want to talk about is like, how do the insurers actually assess the part times? Like, what are the considerations? Are they all, if you do one thing, it's all going to be excluded? Like, will my indoor cricket be excluded on the policy, or does it have different, assessments?
Yeah, so all insurers rate a range of pastimes, what they think is risky. So when we look through the Australian Government of Institute of Health and Welfare, they put out a study, and it's really good to see that 8 in 10 adults participate in some sort of sport or activity. So it's really common. So it's a common thing that people will either play indoor cricket or play soccer on the weekend and getting out there. So according to this study, about 18.4 million Australians aged 15 and over played sport or part in some form of physical activity in the last couple of years. The most popular activity is recreational walking, which I guess makes sense. It's something we can all do, walk outside. So that had over 10 million participants.
It's arguably something we all have to do. Like,
Yeah.
unless you're actually, bound in a wheelchair, we all walk everywhere. But I guess
but
recreationally,
recreation,
yeah,
going out for a walk, yeah. And
yeah, that's
then
not me.
of those 10 million, 3.7 million have said that they like to do bush walking. And then team sports, soccer's up there, 1.2 million participants. Basketball's really high, I guess, because you can play that all year round. And then Aussie rules football with about 500,000 participants throughout. So, which is interesting because when I looked into walking's obviously fine, but bushwalking, you hear on the news that someone's got lost going bushwalking and things like that. But as far as insurers, The ones that I had a look at, there were no what we call exclusions. So there were no problems with people declaring that they're going to go bushwalking. There's no problem with people declaring that they're going to play soccer unless they get paid. That's a different thing. Whereas
Mm.
Aussie rules, they have some different terms depending on how often you're going to play and what sort of competition level that you're playing with Australian rules, because apparently you're more likely to get injured.
And so talk to me about those different considerations from an insurer's point of view when it comes to like AFL.
Yeah, so they break them down into the 4 areas of cover. So life cover being that the lump sum if you get injured, die in the sport. So life cover's usually fine, that they'll cover someone. And the other ones, total and permanent disability, if you're not getting paid money, they'll cover you for. But income protection is one that does concern them because there are lots of injuries with Australian rule football that involve fractures or concussions, and it might mean that someone can't work for a month or two, depending on the severity of the injury. So many of the insurers put what we call an extended wait on their income protection, which means rather than having the normal wait time, if someone makes a claim, they might normally have to wait 30 or 60 days, depending on what the contract is, maybe even 90 days, but they'll put an extended wait period on that so that you have to wait even longer to be able to claim. So for
Yeah.
many people, if they're actually injured playing AFL, they'll be recovered before they could put that income protection claim in. So it's covering the insurer that way.
And sometimes the insurance companies will give the options. Hey, if you want a 30-day waiting period, then we'll put an exclusion on for AFL. If you want a 90-day waiting period, then there's no exclusion for AFL. And for anyone out there who plays AFL and it's like, well, it's not that risky. What are we talking about? My nephew just broke his leg, like snapped a bone playing AFL. And so it does happen. Anyone who plays AFL, and if you've never injured yourself, just point to all the guys in the club rooms who have hurt themselves, done an ACL or popped out a shoulder or something, and they're the ones that are costing you these extra risk factors.
I've broken a finger playing. Well, I wasn't even playing. I was just playing kick to kick. So I'll call
Yeah,
that.
right. Yeah.
So apparently in the 2023-24 year, there were 62,100 sport injuries that led to hospital admissions in Australia. And cycling had the highest proportion of sports injury hospitalisations, which
Right.
accounted for about 7,500 cases. And then Australian rules football was next with 5,400, and then soccer. So cycling was quite high, and I think it's because of the fall factor. So because of those injuries, people breaking something is a pretty high thing that happens with both AFL and cycling. So whilst cycling can be okay depending on what type of cycling you're doing, it's actually a pretty high level of place where people injure themselves.
Yeah, that's interesting. And yeah, from an insurance company's point of view, they're not placing exclusions on if you're a recreational cyclist, just on the road and
Yeah.
normally. But if you play AFL, you are. But I guess from I wonder from the stats, if like 10,000 people are cycling on a yearly basis, but only 1,000 people are playing AFL, that AFL injuries make up a such high percentage of actual participants. Maybe that's why there's that difference.
Yeah, it's interesting because cycling can really depend if you're going to, again, fill in that form that says that you intend to do it. Cycling, if you're riding on the road, normal road bike, seems to be okay. But as soon as it comes to any element of off-road biking, it can cause concerns for the insurance company. So I had a client recently who, young mum, just back to work, and she said on her form that she intended to go back push bike riding. And as part of that, the insurance company asked, what sort of cycling is that? And she said, on cycle paths, off the road. I want to be safe. I want to be riding on the roads. And the insurance company came back and said, well, if you're riding on an unpaved path, we'll have an exclusion. We won't cover you for that. Whereas if you're riding on the road, we're okay to cover you. So I rang up the insurance company and said, what's this all about? And they said, yep, we have lots of claims with people who are riding normal. This is not mountain bike riding, severe going up and down over hills, but just riding a push bike. If you're on gravel, this particular insurance company were quite concerned that people fall off and have a break. Whereas if you're riding on the road, even though you think inherently there'd be more risk because of cars, they were more happy with people doing that.
Yeah, which is interesting because I've actually never heard that scenario. I've heard like competitive mountain bike riders. So if you're doing like weekend competitions, therefore you're going quicker, you're trying to win, you're taking more risk doing that. But just normal everyday mountain bike riding on the dirt path, which I do, on a should be more regular basis. But I would have less of a dad bod if I went more often. But yeah, it is interesting to see the difference, and the wins change when it comes to insurance outcomes, because I'm certain we've had clients in the same situation with that same insurance company, have cover, no issues, no questions asked. But today they must have looked at the last 12 months, or even that stats that you just read out saying, well, actually cycling makes up most sports injuries than anything else. So let's start being a bit more strict on those applications that are coming through. So that's an interesting one. And so what happened with that client? So you went ahead and said, yeah, let's take the cycling exclusion, or what was the outcome?
We rang so I rang the BDM in this particular instance, and I spoke to him, and he said, yep, we have had a lot of claims, like you just said, Phil, of people. So we're becoming more cautious in that area. So we reached out to another insurer who were happy to take on that risk, thinking because it hasn't impacted them at this point. So they were happy to have someone cycling on the paths. So that was no problem. It'll be interesting to see, I think, in the future with e-bikes, as e-bikes are becoming more common, and there's two types of people who ride e-bikes. There's the people who have had a few too many drinks and are riding around the cities, Sydney or Brisbane or Melbourne after a few drinks late at night, jump on a bike without the helmet and riding through the traffic. They are a major cause of injury,
Mm.
fronting up to casualty departments, versus someone, apparently the big intake of e-take riders in Australia are women, because women are taking it up as something that they can help them get up and down the hills. So it'll be interesting to see how the insurance companies start to look at e-bikes, I think, in the future, when it comes to people who want to get cover, who are going to play it at their e-bikes.
As an e-bike owner myself, I love them because the fun thing about mountain bike riding is going down the hills. That's the fun thing. The worst thing about mountain bike riding is going up the hills, because you got to do the work and the exercise. And so e-bike just means I get to do the fun stuff more often. And so, yes, it will be interesting.
That's why I ride a motorbike, Phil.
Yeah, it's even easier. Yeah.
Like steroids.
Yeah.
So, which is interesting again, because coming back to the Pastimes, I've got a rally car that has those exclusions that I mentioned, but I also ride a motorbike. I live in northern New South Wales, and the roads here are really lovely, and there's some really lovely scenery to get out to. So I ride a motorbike, and I don't have any exclusions on that. So, which means that if something happens, I get covered under my normal policy, which is fantastic. But statistically, motorbikes are only around about 4.5% of registered vehicles, yet they make up, motorbike riders, I don't know if I want to say this out loud, but they make up around about 21% of the road fatalities. So a very small percentage of registered vehicles, but a much larger percentage of fatalities, and also people getting injured in hospitals, yet there's no exclusions on those. Of normal road bike riding in the bush. Bit different.
And that's where it's interesting. Like sometimes insurance companies, they can get very granular on some issues, but at the end of the day, insurance companies, they are obliged not to discriminate. The way in which they can discriminate through exclusions and loadings and declining is if they have statistical proof that it has an impact. And so you think about, those fatalities make up, just over 20% of all road fatalities, but only 4.5% of actual registered vehicles. But I think from the insurer's point of view, if I was to put their hat on, well, there's just over 200 fatalities in Australia wide. And so it would make up a really small portion of any of their claims. And so if it makes up 0.0001% of all claims, shall we impact all, motorbike riders by not including it? That's probably their thinking why it doesn't impact it. But, if you're a cyclist and you go on the gravel, there's one insurance company who I disagree with the outcome. And I'd be tempted to call them up and call them silly sausages. But they've obviously made that judgment call. Moving forward, we don't want to we want to exclude that from the policy.
Yeah, that's right. So it's just really interesting, and I guess it goes to show the value of being with an organisation like we are, that we go out to a multiple of insurers. So if one insurer says no, we can either one push back or go to someone else that's going to offer better terms, because not everything is black and white, and just because one organizer or one company says no doesn't mean that they all will. So that's a pretty good thing to understand as well.
Are there any other pastimes that are worthwhile kind of touching on, and the outcome of them that we haven't maybe touched on?
Well, one that I wanted to bring up that I thought was interesting was horse polo. So, horse polo, if let's say if you're riding your horse pony, that's generally okay. As soon as you say that you're going to do any form of competition, that can involve having some exclusions. So, horse polo does have exclusions for trauma and total and permanent disability and income protection. So that means that you probably wouldn't be covered. But if you're going to go swimming and participate in water polo, where people are grabbing and you're treading water and people are grabbing at you and you're trying to float everything, that's fine. That's no worries. Insurance companies don't think that that's a problem. So
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting.
And if you've watched the Olympics and watched those water polo matches and the underwater cameras, they get savage there. So
You
yeah,
see some of the competitors coming out, they've got scratches all over.
yeah,
They're missing half their swimming kit. Yeah,
yeah.
no, give me the horse polo any day, Phil.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. Well, I think we've covered a lot of that. And as you mentioned, the value of seeing an advisor and going, let's actually talk about that company. I won't name them, but they are one of the biggest insurers in Australia. They insure a lot of members through super funds. So that's the provider that you go through a super fund. And so one of the downsides of going through your super fund to increase the cover is you only have that choice of going in that. But if you go through an advisor, you get the option to still pay from your super fund, but you get the option of going, oh, Kellie's researched that insurer. They're not going to offer the cover for literally a young mum wanting to do exercise and get on the bike and seemingly be more safe because I'm going to get off the road on a bike path. But they're going to exclude that. But we've got another insurer who's many other insurers who are willing to offer the cover. So that's the value of seeing advice.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we only had one company to choose from because we always dealt with them because they are one of the biggest, that wouldn't have worked out for that client. But the fact that one, we were made aware of that exclusion before the application took place, so we didn't have to put the client through applying and then finding out about it. And secondly, the fact that here at Skye we can go to a range of insurers and we can make sure that we've got the best terms. So that if you're doing something that might be a little bit more risky, or maybe it's not risky at all by riding a push bike, we think it's pretty safe riding it on a cycle path, then we can make sure we're getting the best coverage available for a client, not just putting up with what one particular insurer might have to say.
Yeah, I've got another question about a pastime activity. I can see those guitars in the background. Is playing musical instruments included in pastime
Oh,
injuries?
you think like Mark Knopfler, blisters on fingers and thumbs because
Yeah,
MTV, but you should have your MTV top on, Phil.
I
But
should.
no,
Yeah, actually in the car, but yeah. Anyway, I
yeah,
got my Sky one.
yeah. So I think unless you're listening to Poddy's drum kit all the time and you might get a hearing exclusion from all the drumming noises, I think musical instruments will be fine.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, no, that's fine. It's, and coming back to the question, I'll read out the question of what the one insurance company has asked is like, and this is really comes down to the importance of reading the questions or listening to the questions in particular, because that's what you're going to be assessed against if you ever claim. And so do you currently participate in, or do you have any intention of participating in any sport or hazardous activities, including but not limited to, gives a whole range. And then also talks about a hazardous activity refers to a recreational or occupational activity that has an increased risk of injury when performed. So coming back to your situation and your exclusion, now you've got a rally driving exclusion. And I did want to ask you if you've watched the Dakar movie, because I watched that on the plane the other day and it was so good. But does that mean you've got that exclusion for life? So if you stop rally driving, you're still going to be excluded forever, or can that be removed?
That's a really good question. Given that often people who have done it once, might say they stop, but likely to pick it up again because of the fact that it gets in your blood. I don't know if you're not going to do it again, why you'd need to have it have it excluded, but I'm sure you could say that you're definitely never going to do it again, and they could have it removed for you.
Yeah. And there's some situations, it's like if you applied for cover and you were doing competitive cycling, or anything like that, you want to make sure you get that exclusion removed if you stop doing competitive cycling. If you legitimately don't think you'll do it in the future, you don't go and say, "Yep, I'm not doing competitive cycling because the season's ended." If next season starts and you plan to pick it up again, or like same as football, if you're in the summer season, you're not playing football. Well, the question is, do you have any intention of participating in that sport in the future? If you know you're going to play next season, then you've got to disclose yes and articulate to the insurer that that's still going to be the case.
Yeah, and I think AFL is a good one because young people can be paid when they're younger. They can get, a match fee if they're good enough, and they would have exclusions when they're getting paid as in a semi-professional mode. But when they become totally amateur, maybe even in soccer, football, that exclusion could be removed, and you could still be playing on a weekend, and so still declare that intention, but know that you're not getting paid for it anymore. So
Mm.
it's worthwhile keeping the insurance company up to date with what your movements are when it comes to your activities and pastimes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. All right, Kelly. Well, this has been a really good episode. I do have a question. Is there anything else that we kind of haven't touched on that you think is important, or just any other points that you think is really important for anyone watching to understand?
No, I think what this really showed for me, Phil, was that it's really important to, or one, declare what you're going to do, that intention, but also the value, as we've said before, the value of going through an advisor to make sure that what you're going to do, if it's going to be covered, or if it's not, what terms that actually means. So what that actually means for you, rather than just guessing and not knowing and hoping with your fingers crossed that you have cover and you don't know. I think that would be even worse.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time, Kelly. And if you're watching this and you want to see any other deep dives that we've done, you can see them on the screen right now. Thanks heaps for watching. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.